Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to our monthly Charter School Investor Podcast, What Charter School Leadership Looks Like. Each month, we meet with leaders in the charter school sector to better understand how they land the plane while it is still being built. I'm Maria Mills, Reporting Manager for School Improvement Partnership, which focuses on data transparency in the charter school sector. And man, am I excited for our guest today. Rhonda Dillingham, and I can't wait to chat with her about her life, her experiences specifically in the charter landscape in North Carolina. A little bit of background, North Carolina has over 210 charter schools with dozens opening every year. They've recently changed to the authorizer being the Charter School Review Board. Today, we have Ms. Rhonda Dillingham joining us. She's the Executive Director of the North Carolina Association of Public Charter Schools, which is also the host of the statewide annual conference. It facilitates the largest networking opportunity for North Carolina charter schools and all of its supporting entities. Its mission exists to advance quality educational opportunities for all North Carolina children by supporting and expanding successful charter schools. So a little bit of background before we jump into our conversation, just so our listeners can kind of have an idea. She's taught high school for 20 years and she co-founded Uwharrie Charter Academy. She has degrees from Greensboro College and High Point University, and she's now in her 7th year leading this association. School Improvement Partnership currently reports on over $2 billion of charter school loans. I'd like to note that we actually have a really exciting offer for listeners of today's podcast. Any North Carolina charter school which signs up for quarterly and annual reporting through School Improvement Partnership will receive 10% off their annual fee. Please email me, Maria, School Improvement Partnership to do so. Also, before we get started, I wanted to just take a quick moment to thank our sponsor, Herbert J. Sims. From single-site charter schools and CMOs, from expansions to startups, H.J. Sims delivers innovative and flexible capital solutions that meet their clients' evolving needs through their finance right approach. I would love to welcome Rhonda to our podcast, What Charter School Leadership Looks Like. Morning, Rhonda. How are you today?
Good morning, Maria. I'm great. It's so good to talk to you today. And thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
I'm super excited to chat through some of the things. We talked a little bit before, and I just don't even know where to get started in the scope of, I keep bringing myself to what does charter school leadership look like? And, whether we're North Carolina, Florida, New York, California, it looks so different, but then there's some tenets that are the same in almost every one of those journeys. So I'm super excited to dive into what yours started with and looked like. Tell us a little bit about yourself and, bridge little Rhonda, and then, we'll walk through some of your background and where you are today.
Well, little Rhonda was a very imaginative child. And when I was little and I was playing with my sister and my cousins, I really only ever wanted to play school. And they always joke and say that Rhonda refused to play unless she could be the teacher. And so that tells you a little bit about about how much I love to teach. And fast forward, I went to college at Greensboro College. Took me 6 years, but I was a single parent working full time. But I got my teaching certificate and my degree from Greensboro College, and I went to work as a high school English teacher at Asheboro High School in 1997, and enjoyed that so much for so many years. Just love students.
So that the progression from single motherhood to getting your degree to then being an English teacher in Asheboro. And what county is Asheboro in? Describe the background of that county a little bit for me.
Oh, wow. Asheboro was in Randolph County.
Okay.
And for many, many years, it was a manufacturing town. And, like many similar towns in the United States, those industries basically dried up and went overseas. And at one point, U.S. News and World Report named Asheboro the fastest dying town in the country. And that was not a moniker that the town or any of its citizens really wanted or appreciated.
Yeah, it's not something you want to put on a billboard. My goodness. And that was while you were teaching at the high school that this occurred? That dying and because of the manufacturing industry. Oh, okay. So the only thing I know about Asheboro, and this really lends itself to my newness in North Carolina, is the zoo. You drive through, you see the sign for the zoo, and that's the only thing I know about it. Rural manufacturing, not particularly any big cities around it. So did you have any affiliation with the zoo?
Oh my goodness. I am a person who could talk about the zoo all day. I love the North Carolina Zoo. Most people don't realize it's the largest natural habitat zoo in the world. And
I did not know
Asheboro High,
that.
I know. So many years ago, well, not that long ago, but Asheboro High School and the North Carolina Zoo came together to form what is called the Asheboro High School Zoo School. And that was started in 2007 with 4 teachers from Asheboro High School: English, math, science, and social studies. And I was fortunate to be the first English teacher there for the first 5 years, and it was amazing. The most enriching professional experience as a teacher I ever had in my career. I was able to take my students into the zoo every day if I wanted to.
Oh
And
my goodness. Hold on. I have to get some more information on this because I feel like I stumbled on this. So we have US News and World Report basically debunking any sort of growth that Asheboro is going to have. It's the fastest dying city in America.
Mhm. That's
And then you were a high school English teacher and you got this opportunity for what sounds like a partnership program with the largest natural habitat zoo in the world to be an English teacher that was able to partner all of the studies of the students with the zoo.
that's right.
Oh, that sounds awesome. So talk about like again, here I am. Okay, Maria, the podcast is about charter school leadership. Bring that around. Wow. Like that is the tendency of charter schools, innovation and learning and experiential learning run wild. Do you have any like crazy good memories of an example of something that y'all did and this is high school English. So this is when the kids are the most removed. They don't want to talk to you. I mean, they just want to be with their friends or think about, graduating. And here they are. And what kind of programs did you do? Or tell me about a cool lesson that you did with them.
Oh my goodness. I can think of so many. First of all, I wasn't a big test giver toward the end of my teaching career. I relied on project based learning for students to show what they know rather than tell it on a test with a paper and pencil. And so for assessments, we would actually use the grounds of the zoo for students to show what they know. So I remember doing a unit. That was tied into Cyrano de Bergerac, the play, and we learned about birds and bird calls. When I taught Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis, where this guy thinks he's a dung beetle, there's actually a statue of a dung beetle in the zoo. And so to introduce that novella, I took my students to that statue as sort of the inspiration to begin the study of that work of literature. I had students interacting with guests in the zoo by interviewing them, so teaching them those soft skills that we need in this world, to be able to just talk to people and put the telephones down and have those engaging conversations. So yeah,
Well,
it was awesome.
I'm just getting excited here because I think of both my experience as an administrator. If I was observing this lesson, I'm like, oh, accomplished. Oh my goodness. Yes, I want to keep writing more about like the critical thinking skills and the 21st century knowledge that we're supposed to be teaching our kids that we immediately go to, okay, how do we do a resume? How do we present ourselves in an interview? But exactly what you're saying, I can visualize them, casually chatting professionally with
Mhm.
visitors at the zoo. And for Franz Kafka's to have any sort of semblance to a ninth or 10th or 11th grader, like what a weird book to begin with.
I know.
But now they went there and they saw at least the weirdness that was equivalent to a dung beetle statue and made a true connection that, I read that book probably 3 times because I was forced to, and I don't have any recollection of semblance or connection or true being able to be like, wow, I learned something with that. Oh, that sounds awesome. And this is still sort of at the beginning of your teaching career, right?
Well, it was actually toward the end, and
Okay, okay. So walk me through like so this you were at Asheboro for a little bit and then we're at like 2007. So towards the end of your teaching career. So you have this fantastic partnership with Asheboro Zoo, and it sounds like sort of a pilot program that Asheboro as an entity was trying to do to, I mean, whether hype against the US News and World Report article or just trying something new. So what came next in the world of Rhonda?
Wow. Well, yeah, it was a very enriching experience, both for me professionally and for students. And it really just ignited my passion for teachers to be treated as professionals and for them to be able to teach their students what they know their students need. And that type of autonomy is rare in traditional public education. And it wasn't, we didn't have as much freedom as we wanted. And so, to feel any bit stifled after that creative experience just led me with a colleague to explore what would it look like if teachers truly had the autonomy and flexibility that they desire. And that's when the idea of a charter school came into play. At first, I didn't even know what a charter school was, but with the research and exploration, it really turned out to be the perfect marriage of what we wanted and what the town needed. And so that turned into the idea for Uwharrie Charter Academy, which began and initially as a high school. Now there were some roadblocks along the way. At the time that we had the idea for the charter school, that's when North Carolina still had a cap on the number of charter schools allowed in the state. And so this is when, you when you get to be my age, you sort of look back and you think how all the pieces were put together. But at the time, I didn't really see it. But we went to the former Speaker of the House and said to him in this meeting, "You were integral in passing the charter school law in 1996, but there's no charter school in Randolph County." He said, "Yeah, I know, that's always bothered me." And so we said, "Well, you get that cap lifted and we'll start this school." He did, and we did. And so
Wow.
the school started in 2013.
That's what I was going to ask you. So, just in terms of progression, I'm walking through the timeline because I'm not a native North Carolinian, and I'm fairly new to the charter school world, but not new to public education. So I'm just trying to align with some of the things that were occurring nationwide and then specific to North Carolina. So your experience at the Asheboro Zoo Collaborative School kind of led you to noticing that Randolph County, again, the same county that was kind of needing some more innovation and drive, was lacking a charter school. And then similarly, like maybe your experience at the zoo school with slight bit of autonomy, not exactly what you wanted, then led itself to be like, oh, let me just open my own school. That's amazing. And then that Speaker of the House, when he lifted the cap, there the cap in North Carolina at the time that said there was only allowed to be so many charter schools around. So then that was lifted, and then Uwharrie Charter Academy was able to be opened in Randolph County in 2013. So we are 10 years later. We have a lot more gaps to fill in. But speaking about Uwharrie, it was a 9 through 12 high school. And what was your role when you started there?
I was the director of curriculum and just so proud to be a part of that school. We started it as a high school, but immediately after we opened the doors, there was an outcry from the community to go down to middle grades and then eventually elementary. And so now the school is a full K-12. Fast forward these 11 years later, and I think it's the fifth largest charter school in the state, drawing.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it draws from like 11 different LEAs and just a awesome entity to have in this community.
Well, awesome entity to have, but also incredibly successful, just given the confines that normal education routes happen. You kind of started with the hardest one. Like you started with the high school,
Yeah.
and that's the hardest group of
Mhm.
children, however much I love them. to build culture and cohesion from scratch in a 9 through 12. It's much easier to start in kindergarten and kind of, grow your own all the way through. So that immediate obstacle of starting with the high school and the caliber and expectations for accreditation and, rigor in those classrooms, plus the hiring, and then to go down to middle school and the weirdness that is adolescence, and then to go to elementary school.
Mhm.
What other challenges did you either incur or overcome during your time there?
Well, I think it's important to note that the colleague and I who started the school were both experienced high school teachers, and it really bothered us that these bright minds that we taught would graduate, go to college, and never come back. And we felt like if we gave them a reason to want to come back and an investment in the community, then it would benefit both businesses in the community and students as well. And so we married those two things together with flex days, where students got to go out into the community to see how what they learn in the classroom translates into the real world. And that has been, a unifying piece of that school since the very beginning. To and it was to solve the problem of what U.S. News and World Report said was the fastest dying town. So, yeah, that was a huge obstacle to overcome. When starting a charter school, there are always, especially if you begin one in an area that has never had one, there are always those obstacles with, inspectors, for example, coming in and asking questions and just not really knowing, having the background knowledge that they need to be able to help the school get started. So, yeah, it
Well, and
was.
you think about what you're saying in 2013 and the experience that I've even had in the past 5 years. It just feels like they are some of the foundational struggles for sure. I feel like even now, 2023, I'm still having to redefine or explain what a charter school is. Like, no, we are a public school. No, no, public school, we're still held accountable. I just feel like some of those same things that you mentioned even 10 years ago are some of the struggles that founding leaders still have today without having you as almost a predecessor. You started this Uwharrie Academy and now 11 counties field into it. And when you talk about flex days, like that's still part of the conversation that we're having now is how can we bridge remote learning with flexibility in the classroom? How can we bring our outside inside? These are still struggles that leaders are having currently in the charter school world. It just really speaks to your innovation and kind of, how you took what you had and you made it this brilliant, still very successful situation. This is awesome. You really set the tone for the latter half of our conversation as we continue to chat about charter school advocacy and leadership. So I'm going to take a quick break here. School Improvement Partnership wants to again thank the Charter School Investor Podcast sponsor, Herbert J. Sims. From single-site charter schools and CMOs, from expansions to startups, HJ Sims delivers innovative and flexible capital solutions that meet their clients' evolving needs through their financed right approach. Okay, so coming back in now, what lies ahead is I think where I want us to really chat about. We've walked through, baby Rhonda and how the innate need to teach and I guess be the eternal student was always the case. And then from that to being a teacher, and it just feels like innovation has been your middle name since all the way back when you started teaching, opening this awesome charter school that is still a tremendous success, one of the founding charter schools in North Carolina back in the early 2000s. And now here we are in 2024. I guess I don't even know where to start. Tell us a little bit about the association. I kind of gave a brief introduction, but when we're talking about charter school leadership, you have a very different role, today, Tuesday in April of 2024. So, what does a day in the life of Rhonda look like now? What does the association do for public charter schools? And just tell us a little bit about where you are currently.
All right. Well, looking back at all those experiences that I've had professionally, it makes sense that I am where I am now because I learned a lot about interacting with people and advocacy and leadership and all of those things that I experienced through those 20 plus years, in the schools and in the classroom. So now, fast forward, I've been the executive director of the association for 7 years, and I'm very proud of that. I tell people that it truly is a blessing to be in this role because I went from being responsible for the 200 students in the school and now to being responsible for over 200 charter schools. And that's educating, over 150,000 students in this state. And I love North Carolina. So I feel like I'm really doing something valuable to promote innovation, to promote the professionalism of teachers, to promote um, charter schools as laboratories of innovation. Just, I love the work that we do through the association with our support of schools and our education of the public and legislators about charter schools, still continuing to tell the story about what we are and what we aren't. And then also doing that legislative advocacy on the local, state, and federal level.
Yeah, because North Carolina's entire foundation is different than South Carolina, is different than, Virginia. I think West Virginia just opened their first charter school about a year ago. So you think about the growth in charter schools and public school choice in America as a whole. Um, I think North Carolina, you mentioned this at our preview call, 37 counties in North Carolina still don't have any charter schools in like representation. Is that right?
Yes, that is right. And I really have a heart for the children in those areas because I think the fact of the matter is not all students learn the same way. And so every child deserves the right to be educated in the way that best fits who they are. And whenever we have 37 counties in the state that don't offer some type of school choice, parent choice, then that means that these children are limited in the possibilities. So, I want to work really hard to change that.
Yeah, I can see that being one of your goals in general, just along those same lines of advocacy and innovation, but also like a need. It's just simply not fair that those kids only have their district choice school as an option. And I think that that's one of the most exciting things about charter schools is they usually pop up when there is a need or there is, a parent or community noticing. I'm thinking of a couple of the charter schools that School Improvement Partnership works with. It's usually exactly how you described in that Randolph County, where many different districts feed in. So it's no longer just based on where you live and your address zone, but you can start to pick what type of school. I think of those cool things you did even before the charter school part of your life at the zoo school and being able to kind of decide who your community partner is and advocate for what resources you have directly around you. Yeah, one of the things that I think keep coming up in conversation, and I just kind of wonder where it is in your scope as a leader, and this is great for even just a generic type of thought process, statewide or charter school wide. What are some of the noticings that you're still thinking schools and students are experiencing with learning loss, ESSER funding, or are you noticing any glaring disparities statewide with some of those issues?
Well, yeah, we definitely are facing the Esser cliff, but one of the things that has bothered me for a long time is this barrier that I see between charter schools and district schools, where there isn't a collaborative attitude, there isn't a desire, and for whatever reason, to share best practices. And at the end of the day, they're all our students, whether they go to your school or they go to a district school, they're all North Carolina students. And we need to think about what is best for them. We need to think about what is best for the state and to open up those channels of communication to help each other so that all students benefit.
Yeah, it feels just like unfortunate competition. We could make this such a productive situation to where the partnership becomes not something that we're pitting against each other. And I've experienced some fantastic opportunities that different schools have been able to create with their local LEA. But then there's some other ones that are still feeling like, the charter schools are infringing on public school education. And there it goes again, just inherently therein lies our goal, right? To continue to work with that, reevaluating what our goal is public school education and choice for parents and families and students. I love the way that you described how every child deserves to learn the way that they learn best, because it's also upon the teacher to figure that out. And if they're not given some autonomy or flexibility, which is the inherent goal of charter schools, sometimes, a scripted curriculum just doesn't do it for them.
Exactly.
Really exciting. So can you spend another minute or two just kind of explaining the charter school leadership landscape? Because so many states are different. And in my experience and your experience and our lives of education are different. But North Carolina and its authorizer process, just give me a couple sentences, just kind of setting the tone for what's happening here in 2024 that might have been different from the past 20 years.
Yeah, we've seen a huge change in North Carolina as a result of House Bill 219 being passed in the last legislative session, and that is the establishment of the Charter School Review Board. So North Carolina is a single authorizer state, and up until last year, the State Board of Education was the authorizer, with the Charter School Advisory Board making recommendations to the state board, but the state board would make the final decisions.
Decision.
Now that has shifted to the Charter School Review Board, and I really feel like we're in a great place, because if you look at the makeup of that review board, what you see is a lot of people, and they don't get paid for this, but they're serving on that review board, and they are heads of very successful established charter schools in this state. And they really wear the mantle heavily, knowing that the decisions they make have a statewide, nationwide impact on the perception of charter schools. So they try very hard to get it right. And
Oh,
they're just getting
100%.
started, but they're trying really hard to get it right.
Yeah, and you think about that sort of pressure ultimately is to be in charge at that magnitude and take your experiences from the school level, but also ensure that you're, maintaining the true dogma of charter schools, which is flexibility and innovation. So sometimes that one size fits all does not fit all. And I've listened and been in plenty of those meetings. I'm sure not as many as you have, where it's just unbelievable how much time and thought process is put into reviewing those applications and doing it with fidelity. So I guess a question I have here, and this is a little bit something that, I don't know what my answer is, but it really lends itself to, your leadership and the charter school landscape in North Carolina. What are some of the things now that that you wish you had known either at the beginning of you joining the association or at the beginning of your career? I don't know. Are there any crazy life lessons that you're like, man, if only I had known now what I knew then, or switch that, reverse it?
I personally, and just who I am, I tend to be sort of a idealistic Pollyanna type of person. And so, one of the lessons I think that would have been great to learn early on, but it took some years, is to, when people show you who they are, believe them.
Yeah.
That's a big one. But as far as, in this role as the director of the association, if I look back at 7 years ago, y- North Carolina is not different from the rest of the country, where we have huge challenges with facilities for charter schools in the state. And I think I would have worked even harder back then to try to find a solution, because now what we're seeing is these brand new schools want to get started, and they just can't, because they can't find a facility or they can't find the funding. And so they're requesting delays, sometimes even two delays. And it has a ripple effect where, the community where that school is attempting to be established might lose their enthusiasm for it, because it seems like it's just never going to happen.
Oh,
So
sure. I think of, you know, having to do your interest surveys. Okay, how many counties, how many people, how many families are interested? And then almost having to advertise for your new school, but not being able to showcase even a picture of what the building might look like. So facilities in general, and you know, school improvement partnership definitely supports that data transparency when it comes to capital bonds and purchasing for facilities. But in terms of the entire state, I can see that being a tremendous hurdle for many different types of situations to have to overcome, because you also think about just the real estate market and the land. And yeah, if there's not an outfitting or retrofitting of a building, then you have to come up with everything to start from scratch. And I feel for those schools that are now in their second year of you know, postponing. And how do you maintain the momentum at that point? It is a little discouraging.
oh,
Um,
absolutely.
were you going to say something else? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, I think about schools and churches alike. The fact of the matter is a school and a church, it's not the building, it's the people that are involved. However, whenever you're trying to sell your idea of a school to the community, they want to know, what's that building gonna look like? Where will it be? How long will my commute time be? And will my child be safe and happy there? So that the building is really important.
You know, you worded that so ideologically perfectly, because it really doesn't matter about the building. It's the learning that happens in the classrooms with the fantastic teachers. And you know, you can close your eyes, and when you close your eyes and you picture children genuinely learning, it's very rarely you picture the building. But
Right.
it's really hard to sell that without having the four walls and the locked doors, or the computer state of the art programs, or you know, the nice playground in the gym. It is kind of a tit for tat. You kind of need both, especially when you're selling a dream, right? If it's not there yet, you have to have something to be able to speak to. But you really did word that brilliantly.
Thank you.
um I kind of, the only last thing I can think about is, you know, and this might be a trick question, so I don't even know if it just kind of ends our conversation back and forth a little bit, but it just feels like a constant struggle, you know, you leading the entire state of charter schools with you at your conference, your networking opportunities, your trainings on a daily basis. I get those emails about, you know, making sure that charter schools in North Carolina are held to the highest standard of both training, accountability, transparency. But then how do you also still balance like those kind of regimented expectations that yield results, but also still foster creativity and innovation and project-based learning, and not a one size fits all? Like, how do you do it?
Ooh, well, I think about the phone calls I get from people who call me up and they say, "Well, I have this idea for a charter school and can we just talk about it?" That takes me right back to the root of what we're supposed to be. And I love having those conversations with them, just to get the juices flowing about ideas and mission statements and visions and goals and value propositions, all of that. It's what's necessary to benefit students. And if we're not having conversations about what benefits students, then why are we doing this?
Yeah, exactly.
And
You know, at the end of the day, it's what's best for kids. I feel like I say that both in every one of my conversations with teachers, with students, with parents, is like that's what leads our decisions, regardless of what the outcome is.
right.
Exactly. It's wonderful.
Yeah. It takes me back to when I became a teacher and the love of students and just remembering that every day. And even though I don't get to interact with them like I once did, those students still are in my mind, in my memory, and I want to build a future for their children.
But you described it perfectly. I absolutely could vision, or could envision somebody calling you and trying to explain their you know, their idea for a charter school would be the same exact light bulb moment that you remember from being a teacher, when you're like, oh, this is why I'm doing this, because it's not the salary. Let me be clear.
Mhm.
So the same sort of, it's not what's best for kids in the direct fashion that it used to be when you were the one teaching that. But I mean, you're fostering and holding these innovative dreams of people being able to meet the needs of hundreds and hundreds of thousands more students eventually. So while I mean, I can also attest to kind of feeling one step removed, but the impact that you have is so much greater at this point.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that, and it's very, very important to have a strong nonprofit organization like the association in a state that, the Office of Charter Schools has its place, the Charter School Review Board has its place, but the association is intended to sort of fill in the gaps in what those entities can't provide. And in order for us to do our very best work, we really need for every school to be a part of it, because that's your way to have a voice in the shape of school choice, parent choice, charter schools in North Carolina.
And our kids' future. Exactly. That's what we're all here for, is because ultimately we're having to pave the way, build the roads, and build those buildings for the schools, for the kids to eventually take our places in the next couple of years. Yeah, this is awesome. I so enjoyed this conversation with you. Really, just North Carolina is lucky to have you. Thank you for being with you're so generous with your time, your conversation, and your insights. But ultimately, thank you for being such an advocate for school choice, North Carolina, but showcasing really what charter school leadership looks like. On that note, so I just wanted to say one more thank you to our sponsor, Herbert J. Sims. And Rhonda, thank you so much for a wonderful day. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And guys out there, this is what charter school leadership looks like.